Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report, the first podcast to bring you the local fishing report in 30 minutes or less, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I'm Joe Baya, and today I'm joined with Captain Patrick Garmison. Butch is somewhere in the mountains of Colorado getting a little R&R. Guess he might be missing some good fishing, but he's been sending me some pics throughout the week. I think he's handling it okay. Patrick, how you doing this week, man?
Man, I've been doing great. Got out and did a little fishing today, and been focusing on the business this week. Just gearing up, getting ready for the spring. Booking a lot of fishing trips, so that is great news.
That is great news, and I heard a little birdie told me you got some azaleas blooming in your front yard.
Man, yeah, I noticed that when I backed the boat in the driveway and I come walking into the house, and I noticed I had some azaleas starting to bud out.
What does that signal for you?
What that signals for me is I better tighten up and get out after some sheephead. Sure, well, the soil temperature dictates my azaleas, but a lot of times that soil and water temperature go pretty close to hand in hand. So the sheephead spawn is approaching. So I'm getting itchy and getting ready for those guys.
Well, that sounds good. I tell you what. Let's get right into this thing. We've got an onshore report from the Bama Beach Bum, Matthew Isbell. Let's see what's going on down there on Gulf Shores and Orange Beach and some of those Gulf Coast beaches. All right, Matthew, what's new, man?
Things are looking up. I'm positive and I'm upbeat. I'm way less depressed from the winter. Things are definitely on an uptick for the surf fishing right now. So
I was starting to wonder when I was seeing pictures of dead deer on the Bama Beach Bum page.
Yeah, I've been spending more time in the woods and more time chasing sheephead than I have standing on the beach lately. So it's been a desert out there, but things are changing, and we're right on schedule. You know, usually mid-February tends to be that turning point, and so things are rocking and rolling. I feel like they should. Just yesterday, we went out, and whiting have been really good on the pier throughout the winter, but you know, anywhere on the beaches you can forget about it. But yesterday we caught about 30 in about 2 hours, and 18 we kept 18, about 18 of them were keepers, you know, about that 11-12 inch range, so which are good size whiting. So yeah, really excited to see that. Caught 2 pompano this past week, keeper size and a undersized, which that's perfect. Those are the first 2 I've seen so far this year. But that's good. That's perfect. They're starting to move in. Schools are going to start moving in. It's going to just get better and better and better.
Well, I know you don't have a depth finder out there on the beach to tell you or any electronics to necessarily tell you about what the water temperatures are doing. But based on the Bama Beach Bum tow test analysis, are the water temps starting to warm up a little bit?
No, I haven't seen any change as far as what it feels to the touch. It's still quite chilly. It feels like ice cold water to me. But based on the things that I look at, I think we're still averaging anywhere from like 59 to 62 degrees. So still a little low for those pompano. Generally mid 60s is when we start seeing the schools come in pretty good. So we're getting close to that.
That being the case, with water temps still being low, are you still finding those fish in some of the deeper spots? We talked about it back, kind of beginning of the winter, into the fall, that you were finding a lot of those fish in deeper holes and deeper troughs. Is that still the pattern?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I forget about a lot of the stuff we talk about. Like I'm so like in the moment, like where are we catching fish right now? I forget like what we had to do a month or 2 ago. Yesterday, I'll use that for example. We were catching all those whiting, and it was right on the bar, which is really super shallow, like really shallow water. And I tested. I put baits at all these different depths, and I changed it up, and I searched like for about 30 minutes before we really started getting a good bite. And then it was on once I realized they were hanging on the sandbar, and that was the shallowest water. So interesting thing to bring up and ask, but that's where they were yesterday.
Matthew, that's I think the key to all this fishing, man, is going armed with different tactics. Like a lot of times with me, I'll throw like 3 or 4 different style of baits or whatever, and putting a bait in an area that you're not really comfortable with fishing just to experiment with you have to do it. That's great that worked out for you.
Yeah.
What about locations, Matthew? I mean, I'm not asking you to give me the beach access, but are you doing better closer to Orange Beach or further down around Fort Morgan? I was looking at some of the aerial photography of a lot of that sediment piling out of Mobile Bay. It looks like the water conditions are pretty good, but what are you seeing?
I bounce around so much, and you know what I've noticed. It's been interesting because I communicate with a lot of guys too, so which helps. That it's good to have friends in this industry, and so don't that's a good tip. Make sure don't be a jerk to people. You're going to need help from time to time when you're in the fishing industry or wanting good information. But I talk to a lot of people, and generally I've noticed if we're catching whiting in Orange Beach, and that's really the only thing biting, but they're biting good, the guys that are fishing down Fort Morgan, they're catching whiting too. And same thing with redfish, black drum, pompano. I've really paid close attention to that because I've wondered, hey man, is it really going to help for me to move? And sometimes I feel like it does. It may be just a psychological thing. If you're not catching fish at one spot, maybe move, and you just do better at locating them at the new spot, but necessarily not anything biting any better or different. Just communicating with people, I've noticed, man, it really doesn't matter. I mean, if the fish are there and they're traveling, and it's probably a lot to do with the fact that surf fishing, we're not fishing structure and they're moving up and down. So, if those fish are there and they're cruising and they're hungry, as long as you're putting your baits in the right spot for where they're cruising, it doesn't matter necessarily if you're in Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, Fort Morgan, you'll get them.
Let's talk about baits a little bit before we got to let you go. What are you catching these fish on? No sand fleas right now.
The sand fleas are not readily available. You won't find those. I'm still using shrimp and fish bites. Fresh dead shrimp is a good bait this time of year. I just started experimenting for myself with ghost shrimp because, of course, that's like the secret quote unquote bait that a lot of guys are big believers in, and it makes sense. I trust them. I mean, obviously that is the main food source for fish in the surf. I mean, like sand fleas aren't there. There's not a lot of bait fish running this time of year, but there are tons of ghost shrimp. And so I've been pumping and I've been using some of those alongside fish bites. But personally, I have not seen a difference between ghost shrimp and fish bites. I've actually still caught more fish on the fish bites than I have ghost shrimp. So I'm not going to say that's like the rule or anything here, but based on personal experience, I haven't been too pumped up about taking the time to get the shrimp.
I've got go ahead, Patrick.
I was going to ask him, do you have a color preference, or is the shrimp fish bites or sand flea, or just do you cut the baits up into smaller pieces? Tell me about that.
Yeah, the only two that I ever use are the pink shrimp and sand flea, which sand flea only comes in orange and white. And I'll say based on last year, reviewing everything throughout the year and the baits that I was using and the fish that we were catching, the sand flea fish bite won throughout the year. It was the most productive of the two that I used. I still use the shrimp, but sand flea is really, really productive. For whatever reason, that scent really gets these fish going. I use that one even now more so than the shrimp these days, just because I've had so much good experience with it.
I've got to echo that a little bit and just say when I surf fish in the spring, I've been paying close attention to fish bites versus live bait or sand fleas and that type of thing. What I think the big difference is that fish bite just stays on the hook. I mean, you don't have to worry about casting it off. You don't have to worry about little fish eating it off. You've got baits in the strike zone at all times if you've got fish bites on them. And those things have to sit out there and soak for a long time for it to finally wash them off. And if you hadn't gotten bit in that amount of time, there's either no fish where you got it, where you've put it, or there's no fish, or you got it in the wrong spot. But I will say, and I almost exclusively have used the pink shrimp fish bites. I've tried a bunch of different ones. But last year I was out and was catching a few pompano, but the guy right next to me was waxing my tail. I mean, he was catching 3 to every one I was catching. And finally I went over there just to see why I was getting my butt kicked. It was a shrimp fish bite, but it was he called it an electric chicken color, but it was this neon chartreuse type color. And that day in particular, it was winning. I don't know why. He was casting in the same area. We weren't far apart. We were fishing in the same trough. So it's good. It's good just to mix it up and try some different things. Don't get stuck in that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, especially with your rigs. You know, I tie my own pompano rigs. I tell people all the time, make sure you tie a lot of variations because in your colors of your floats, colors of your beads. You know, when I have my spread and I'm running 3, 4, depending on how many people we have, 5 rods, I'm going to have a variety of rigs out there and colors because pompanos, you know, they're sight feeders and there's certain things that will catch their attention some days and some things that won't. And so if you have that variation, you can usually key in on some type of pattern that, hey, they're hitting this more frequently or better, and I'm not getting bites on this, and I'll end up removing that rig and putting on a rig that is working that day. That's how we tend to be more successful. So no, you're absolutely right. A slight color difference is huge, especially for these pompano.
Well, Matthew, I want you to put your thinking cap on because this week you got to give us that onshore tips brought to you by Geico. Everybody knows Geico has great auto rates, but did you also know they have great rates on boats, ATVs, motorcycles, and personal watercraft? Y'all give Ron Davis a call at 251-445-0053. They even do even more than insure your valuable items. They also have on-the-water services like towing, battery jumps, gas delivery. You can save by bundling these services with your insurance. Call Ron Davis, Geico agent, or visit him online at geico.com/mobile-AL. Thanks, Ron, for bringing this podcast to everybody free every week and giving Matthew a chance to give us the onshore tip this week. What you got, man?
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about fish bites, and a lot of people ask me, do they go bad? And so here's the tip for storage and keeping your fish bites fresh. Now, of course, I use them a lot, so I don't really have a lot of fish bites that sit around for too long. They end up getting used up. But you definitely, a few things you want to keep in mind. There are some organic materials in that fish bite. So it will get crusty and nasty if you let it sit for too long, especially in the sun, especially in outside temperatures. So store your fish bites inside. When you are on the beach, make sure they're not out in the sun. You want to make sure they're covered up in some kind of concealed casing so that they're not in that direct sunlight, because that's going to cook them up and they're not going to be as effective. If you're going to hold on to them for a really long time, like you don't get to fish for a few months or something or whatever, or if you stock up on them, which I would recommend you do, because sometimes these bait shops do run out of them around here, and you're going to want a bunch for pompano season. Put them in the fridge and make sure you store them in there. Keep them cool, and they'll last as long as you need them to. So just a few things to keep in mind when you're hanging on to some fish bites for a while to keep them fresh.
Excellent tip this week, Matthew. Thanks, man. If folks want to book a trip with you, which I'd highly recommend y'all do, if you're wanting to know more about surf fishing and hopefully be able to get out there and be successful yourselves, there's nothing better than going with a guy who can get you ahead of the curve faster. I mean, just learn. You can learn so much from going with a guide. I do it anytime I want to learn something. I go with the guy who knows everything. If folks want to go with you, Matthew, how do they do it?
Yeah, the best way is they can check out my website. It's www.staybummy.com.
Thanks a lot, Matthew.
Well, Patrick, man, I got to get you guys out on the beach this spring. Get you off those boats for a little while. Y'all are missing out on some really simple, just enjoyable fishing.
I dig it. I actually my son, he's 6, and I've put him on a little bit of whiting and pompano action on the beach before, and he really digs it. My problem is I try to haul like everything that I put on my boat out onto the beach, and then I've got sand all over and everything, and I just got to learn to simplify and keep it, a couple rods, couple bags of fish bites, some fresh dead shrimp, and get out there and get to whacking on them.
Use the KISS method.
Yeah, I need to keep it simple.
Speaking of simplifying, let's talk to a guy that I like to think of. He's fairly simple-minded. That's Captain Richard Rutland with Cold Blooded Fishing. Captain Richard, tell us what's going on this week, man, on the inshore side of things.
Woo, man. Not a whole lot to report this week other than just tough fishing.
So is this this is an ugly report?
This will be an ugly one. I hate to bring y'all something ugly, but probably because Patrick's on there. Ugly fishing. I figured I'd give you an ugly report. But
you got the bog coming up this Saturday, so you're trying to hide something. I know it. I'm gonna tap that.
Man, I wish I was trying to hide something, but man, it's been tough. I was real excited to go fishing today. It's kind of look at some of those. Sometimes this time of year, I'll look at some of those lunar tables, and had a real nice high activity period this morning and got out there, and heck, I didn't get a bite till about, 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And I think I got 3 bites and caught 2 fish. The 2 fish were nice size, 21 and a half and a 19-inch fish, speckled trout. But man, that was all I got all day. It was a really, really tough day. And then I also got out on the water earlier this week on Tuesday in one of the tidal rivers and caught 3 fish in about 5 or 6 hours worth of fishing. It was just tough stuff right now. I don't know what's going on to why they're shut down. I don't know if it's the water clean up, water gets dirty, gets cold, then it gets hot. Nobody can kind of figure out a comfort level.
Richard, have you only been throwing artificial bait? Have you thrown any live or dead bait out there or anything like that?
Week before last, I used some live bait and caught a bunch of redfish using live bait. But since then, I've been pretty much strictly artificial. Like you said, I got the bog coming up this weekend, so that's an artificial only tournament. So that's been mostly what that's been all I've been throwing. I don't really know that live bait would make a whole lot of difference right now, to be honest with you, with the way the water temperatures are and the.
Well, since I got both of you guys on the show this week, and there's not a lot going on the inshore side of things, or if it is, everybody's holding it close to their chest because they've got tournaments coming up. But whenever we got a slow period like this, what I tend to do to kind of get my fishing fix is to think about the future and start to plan a trip. So I want to talk a little bit to both of you guys about my very most favorite thing to do when it comes to speckled trout, which is surf fish. I like to get in the water with those fish. So let's talk about that. We got that coming up here fairly soon. When is that going to kick off? When should we start looking for that transition? And what are those indicators? Is it going to be water temperature, or do y'all just go by a date on the calendar?
I tend to wait for watch a water temperature thing. Once the water temperature starts to sneak up into the mid-60s, I say sneaks up and sustains for a little while into the mid-60s. That's when I'm going to start to look in shallow water. When you're talking about beach fishing and stuff like that, it seems like they always seem to show up a little earlier than later, in my opinion. Just going and trying and looking for the right signs is what I usually do. Get down on those beaches and I'm not seeing any kind of bait activity or really bait activity. If I get down there and I don't see any kind of mullet or pogies or any kind of fish like that around those areas, and I don't really have a lot of confidence that there's anything there.
I would certainly agree with that. I like to see something.
As far as just to add to that, as far as the date on the calendar, I always start looking in about, first couple of weeks of May is usually about when it seems like that's going to happen. Look into the future. If I had to guess, I would say things are going to happen to taste early this year. If I had to guess, just with all the fresh water we've had dumped in all the, the major river systems in Alabama filtering out into the bay, and then plus all the local rain we've had in all the rivers, I think that's going to have pushed some speckled trout and redfish probably closer down to the Gulf of Mexico. And I look to see that all happen a little earlier than normal this year. Yeah. That's just my guess. That's my guess. We'll talk about that again in May, huh?
Yeah, I like your thought though. I think all this fresh water's got to move a lot of fish. There's still some fish in some of the normal areas, but it just seems like there's so few that we're missing a lot of fish in our areas right now. So they must be further south.
I believe they're somewhere.
Well, Richard, my report for the week is what happened at the Mobile Boat Show. We had just a ton of people come up to the booth and talk to us, and I really enjoyed getting to meet some of you guys that have been listening, and appreciate all y'all's encouragement. We've really enjoyed bringing you this show for the last year, and it's definitely going to be continuing into the future. One of the guys that came up to us at the show was Freeman Krieger. Freeman actually had just emailed me the week before, and he said, "Hey, I'm Freeman." And I said, "I know your name from somewhere," and it was because he had sent me a Hey Cap question. So you've got it this week, Richard. And Hey Cap question, Freeman emailed it to us at alabama@bestfishingreport.com. Y'all send us any questions you've got for Hey Cap, and when we pick your question, we'll send you a Fairhope rattle. We actually gave Freeman his Fairhope rattle there at the booth. But Freeman says, "I'm from North Alabama and recently bought my first saltwater boat and look forward to inshore fishing around Orange Beach, Eastern Shore, Mobile Bay, and I plan to fish in the Gulf up to about 12 miles on a calm day." Richard, you do a little bit of that yourself, some of that near shore fishing. So, he says, "I have 2 units on my boat and wanted to know what is the best mapping card to buy to safely navigate the inshore waters and locate artificial reefs and other fishing hotspots. I listen to your reports every week and I've really enjoyed your podcast." What do you think, Richard?
Man, if I was going to take a stab at that, I would definitely suggest the Navionics card. Navionics is compatible with Lowrance and with Ray Marine and several other machines. If you go with their Platinum Plus card, it'll usually give you most of the inshore and offshore reefs, plus it'll give you satellite imagery. If you're looking strictly for satellite imagery, which is real useful, like in the marsh over in Louisiana and in Alabama, I would say the standard mapping card is a real good one. And then there's also a lot of different, most of the time with your electronic brand, they have a system that you can download and then upload like all the public reefs onto a SIM card, and then you can plug them into your machine and have all the public stuff. There's well over 1,000 numbers that are posted online with the public stuff. So that's an easy way to get all that stuff on your machine. So, you never know what you're going to be near or bump into or something like that when you've got all that stuff on your machine.
So the bare necessities is what? I'm actually writing this down. Make sure I have this on my boat.
I would say bare necessities for most of those is like your Navionics silver card, and then they have a gold, and then they have a platinum plus, and so they come in different increments price wise. So if you want everything all in one, I would say the Navionics Platinum Plus card. That's, like I said, that's got satellite imagery. Plus, it's going to have most of your reefs already updated on there. If you want a more basic map, you can go with the silver or the gold.
Freeman, thanks for that question, and I hope you enjoy that Fairhope rattle. Richard, thanks for the report. Hope it improves, and stay after him, man. We appreciate you contributing this week.
Man, thank y'all for having me, man. Looking forward to it next time.
All right, see you, Richard.
All right, buddy.
Well, Patrick, we have been onshore. We've been inshore. You know what's next? We got to go offshore. Let's talk to Angelo DiPaola, the coastal connection down in Orange Beach, Alabama. Angelo, what's happening, man, here on middle of February?
Well, man, I'm standing right outside my office here at beautiful Orange Beach Marina, and there must not be a lick of breeze. Every flag over here is pointing straight down. It looks like it's really calm, and the tunas were biting last week when we had great weather. This is just the time of year, and I think that's the theme of February is big tunas and wahoos offshore. So, with that said, we gave that little tip with the styrofoam last week. So, here's my pro tip of the day. Well, nobody's been fishing. Basically, we gave that report. You had a day or two of calm weather. People caught more big tunas. We posted it on the Mobile Big Game Fishing Club page. Everybody was catching big tunas. So, I don't know what else to tell you. If it's calm, go find some friends that don't have kids, because you're basically going to have to put together a trip. Like, hey, guys, it's calm. Who's in? Boom, you go. That's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Unless your friends that have kids have really cool lives and are like, sure, leave me at home with kids for 3 days.
It's tough. You got to be sitting on go this time of year, because you will get these little windows of calm weather, and you've just got to be able to capitalize on it. It's hard to plan a trip this time of year.
It's almost impossible. I mean, if you plan one, you're almost still just penciling it in and you're calling your crew. all right, guys, it looks like it's going to be good, or, hey, guys, it ain't going to be good. We'll just, let's plan 2 weeks from now or whatever. That's the only thing you got to figure out. And, the other thing is the juice worth the squeeze? If you're into catching 150, 200-pound tunas, and you ain't ever caught one, right now is probably the juice is going to be worth the squeeze. Hey, honey, I appreciate it. We're going to wine and dine you for Valentine's Day, but Friday I'm going fishing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt there's been some big fish going down over there. It's certainly the time of year that you could count on finding a larger grade of yellowfin tuna over off the lumps off Louisiana. I couldn't tell you how many people came up to me at the boat show and said, do you think Angelo was telling the truth about that, putting that styrofoam in the chunk?
I heard them talking about it too. They were questioning.
And I said
100% truth. Well, I used to keep all this stuff super top secret. I didn't even like fishing with outside the normal crew because I didn't like telling anybody this. But truth is, I don't think it matters that much anymore. I don't get to fish as much anymore since I have 2 kids. And so, at least I can vicariously live through you guys and social media. And there's enough fish out there for everybody, especially if we leave a few for tomorrow.
And if there's one thing that's definitely true about the tuna fishing in particular, it's that as soon as one tactic is picked up, it becomes less effective. We've seen that over the years as more and more people fish. At one point, chunking was the thing to do. And now it's just part of the arsenal. And then it was kite fishing, and now it's just part of the arsenal. So you really got to go out there and be prepared to do a lot of different things. If they're chewing, it doesn't matter what you do, but if they're not, you do have to be able to mix it up and try some different things. And a lot of times that's how it happens. You get one fish off the chunk and one fish off the kite, one fish off of a popper that you throw to a tuna that's busting on a flying fish or something like that. Catch one trolling, maybe one on a jig early in the morning, but you look up at the end of the trip and, man, hey, we got a nice box of fish. But
great box of fish, great memories. But it's those little things, applying those right little pieces at the right situations.
Well, tell me some more secrets then, man. What other little things when it comes to chunking?
Here's one of the things I picked up in Canada fishing for bluefins, and I thought it was a great idea, and I never thought of it before. So I didn't come up with these guys did. But one of the things they would do on the way out, when the tuna bite's tough, at least I do, I'll fish a really long fluorocarbon leader, and I tend just to reel it right onto my reel. Well, what happens with that is you get memory in your line, and so when you're chunking, your bait has this coil of line. It's not really flowing naturally. So what they would do to counteract that is they take that rod and reel and they put it in the back gunnel rod holder and they'd run it all the way to a forward cleat. And they had a little, thing of, 200-pound test crimped on their little loop. And then they would crank that rod down real tight so that line would be real taut on the way out. What that would do is when we got to where we were fishing, when you started chunking, because we did a lot of chunking up there, is the line had no memory. So the bait really just flowed with the current real nicely. And up there, they also, we were using styrofoam pieces of coffee cup down here, but they were fishing whole herring up there. And they were sticking styrofoam peanuts in their mouth to do the same thing to counteract the weight of the hook.
I wonder, Angelo, you talk about that styrofoam deal, and I wonder if there's not an application where you couldn't just maybe put even like a cork, and maybe like one of the things I've done in the surf is I've taken a little crappie cork and I'll put it on a kale hook and put a little hot glue on there, and it kind of helps that hook float with the bait on it. I wonder if you couldn't take a small piece of cork and just go ahead and hot glue it onto those hooks, and maybe that would keep from having to redo that styrofoam cup every single time that you put that.
Well, you're just cutting off a little piece in there, and like I just cut it at a triangle and just sharp. The problem is, to me, with a piece of cork glued to your circle hook is how does that affect the hookup.
Right.
Break.
Closing
You know what I
down that
mean?
closing down that gap. Right.
Yep.
Yep. All right.
The other thing I would say is this before we go, and I've always liked to snell my circle hooks. And I always felt like the hookup ratio is better, and you want that circle hook snelled back where the hook's bending back towards the line. But when you're having to fish 60 and 80 pound fluorocarbon on a very big fish, the problem is the eye of the hook, where the line's going through the eye, chafes through the hook. So I like on a chunk situation or any situation where I'm having to fish later fluorocarbon, I like to tie just a Palomar knot, blood knot, whatever you feel, fisherman's knot, whatever somebody likes to make that hook to line connection. I'd say that's a good tip.
We call that a trust knot. Whatever knot you trust to not break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Angela, I was gonna talk a little bit more about that fluorocarbon stretching. I use a lot of fluorocarbon leader, whether it be on slip corks or just, braid to fluorocarbon to a lure or whatever. But I always stretch that line out and pull it tight to take that memory out. So I thought that was a great tip.
I mean, it's something that you can apply to just about any kind of fishing situation you're in, but especially something where you're freelining a bait, like if you were going to freeline a shrimp or a croaker, I would think that'd be very applicable in that situation.
Very applicable.
Well, Angelo, thanks for the report again this week, man. I know we're all looking forward to some warmer weather and getting back into the heart of fishing season. We'll be looking forward to getting more reports from you as we go a little further along. Be safe and be nice to your wife on Valentine's Day.
Y'all do the same. We'll catch y'all later.
All right. Thanks, Angelo.
All right. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Well, Patrick, man, it's kind of a tough time of year to be fishing. It's been really cool to me, though. I think a lot of people just tune out fishing during the wintertime. The reality is there's still fish being caught, and there's still there.
Fish to be caught. Yep. But I'll tell you, the cool thing about fishing this time of year that I like and that some people have to really appreciate is that the details, like, pretty much everybody we've talked to today has talked about a little bit of a detail here, a little bit of detail there, to talk about, to gain one more fish here, one more fish there to end up with a good day.
Yeah. So, and you're hearing that a lot from our contributors. There's a lot of little things. I mean, when the fish are biting well, you don't have to be an expert to do well, but when the fish bite tough, those little nuances and those little changes make a really big difference in the amount of fish you put on the boat. And it's so cool to get all this information from guys like you and all the rest of the guys that contribute to this podcast, because they're sharing stuff that it takes years to earn that information. And speaking of those little things, there's something really cool coming up for any of you guys that like surf fishing and are interested in that. You really need to check out the surf fishing seminar that is going to be on Wednesday, February 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Orange Beach Community Center. There's going to be David Thornton, Dusty Hayes, Matthew Isbell, and Chris Veche. All those guys contribute here on the podcast. They're going to cover a lot of the stuff that we can't necessarily cover that well just in this audio format, but they're going to be talking about rigging techniques, selecting the right equipment, catching bait. One thing that I think a lot of guys really struggle with, and I'm one of them, is reading the surf and reading the conditions on the beach, because it's kind of all looks the same to the uneducated eye. They're going to hit all that stuff. It's completely free. Door prizes, drink, snacks, everything you could need. Orange Beach Community Center, February 27th, 6 to 8 p.m. I'm going to be there. Alabama Saltwater Fish Report's going to be there. So y'all come down there and check that thing out. That's going to be a really cool event, and I think you can really learn a lot going into spring.
I have a question, though. How are they going to squeeze just David Thornton and Matthew Isabel? How are they going to squeeze those two guys in a 2-hour segment, let alone adding Dusty and Chris?
I'm just glad I'm not the guy who's in charge of planning that and trying to decide who gets the mic,
I'll tell you one thing, with that amount of talent there, you definitely need to go and check it out and listen to them. But I think it's going to also make people even more aware as to how much more valuable just booking those guys for a trip and going and being able to pick their brain individually is going to be.
Yeah, and being able to interact and ask questions right there is going to be awesome.
That's right.
All right, Patrick, like we say every week, what'd you learn, man?
I think just that diversity. A couple of our contributors talked about going out there, spreading your baits out. Matthew talked about it a little bit where he was talking about going past the bar, on the bar, before the bar, and found the fish on the bar. And had he gone out there with the same mindset of I'm going to fish the trough and I'm going to fish where the water's not, the deepest areas, he would have came out with, it sounds like he may not have caught any fish on that last trip. So the fact that he diversified, put more fish in the boat, and ended up with a nice box of whiting, so it sounded, and Angelo talked about that as well. A little bit of chunking, a little bit of kite fishing, trolling, different things like that. And at the end of the day, the diversity ends up putting together a decent box of fish. So that's what I learned.
Yeah, I agree, and I've seen the same thing. I'd like to say that most of the time somebody would say they'd come up and ask me what I was doing, why I was catching so many more fish than they were, but the reality is it's usually the other way around. And I see the same thing as I'm sitting there going, I'm looking at a guy, he's in my same general area, whether it's on a boat or in the surf, or fishing around a floating rig 90 miles offshore, and they're putting fish in the boat and we aren't. And I'm going, what are they doing different? And I've been on both sides of that coin, but the reality is that when it's tough, you've got to switch things up. You've got to keep a lot of different tactics moving, and it's not always that you find one thing that really puts them in the boat, so to speak. But you'll pick up a fish here, you pick up a fish there, and if you work at it, if you're out there to catch fish, you can put a nice box of fish in the boat or on the beach any time of the year. If you're going out there to have a good time, just relax, then your results might be mixed.
Yeah. This is definitely more of a time where hard work puts fish in the boat or on the beach or whatever. We didn't talk about this earlier, but I'm really into this Major League Fishing thing right now with the bass guys. And one of the things that I was listening to one of the anglers, I don't remember who was saying it, but the guy was talking about that his tactic right now is fishing fast to fish slow. He's not given a single area a long period of time, but while he is at that area, he's fishing really slow. And I found that to be the case. And I think we're going to see that for the next couple of weeks. It's at the end of February. The water temperature still isn't really warm yet. So so I think you still got to fish slow and change it up. Don't sit there and try the same thing over and over and over again. Change it up. And so fish fast to fish slow. How about that?
All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up this week. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like us to email you the podcast, just head over to greatdaysoutdoors.com/ASFR, and we'll send you the new show each week. Y'all keep whacking them. This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by Killer Dock. Are you suffering from dock dysfunction? Check out a full line of dock enhancement at killerdock.com. That's killerdock.com. And also Trotter Marine. Call Ray or Burns at 251-679-5959 or check them out at trottermarinellc.com.
Also brought to you by Geico. Call Ron Davis, Geico agent at 251-445-0053 or visit him online at geico.com/mobile-al.
This is Captain Richard Rutland, and this report is brought to you by Cold Blooded Fishing. You can find us at www.coldbloodedfishing.com.
Also, Ugly Fishing Charters with Captain Patrick Garmison. You can check us out at uglyfishing.com or call us at 251-747-1554.
And also Great Days Outdoors, the South's finest hunting and fishing magazine. Pick up your copy wherever magazines are sold or check them out at greatdaysoutdoors.com.